Hello, we're here with Elder Eloy Martinez. Hello, Elder, how are you?
I'm good.
Can you tell us a bit about when you first started working with Cesar Chavez in the farm workers movement here in California, and then how that proceeded to your Native American movement work later?
When I came from Colorado, I had a lot of anger issues, and I needed to learn how to be humble. And that's what I had seen from them all the times that I had marched with them, how humble they were. So I said, that's probably the best place I could go. So I did that, and my wife, my son had joined me out here then, and we both were,
Oh, they came. That's awesome.
yeah,
Okay.
they came out about 6 months after I was here, they got here. Then we joined the union, and then that's when we started organizing, just doing a lot of stuff with them.
Elder, how did you join the union if you weren't a farm worker? Wouldn't you have to be a farm worker?
I was a farm worker in
Oh, you...
Colorado for a while,
Okay, okay.
but I was kind of like anybody that went on the march was a farm worker.
Okay.
I still identify as a farm worker. Actually, I still identify that way. That's where I came from. There in Corky. Corky was the defensive part. Cesar was the mellowing out part. And then in 1968, we had gone. Actually, when we got out here, we started going to the Intertribal Friendship House because that's where all the Indians were gathered that were here on relocation.
Can you talk about that a bit? The Intertribal Friendship?
Intertribal Friendship House is it's probably the oldest Indian center in the United States that was set up when the tribes were terminated. And the termination policy started. They started taking people from their tribes and sending them to the cities, and they promised them jobs and schooling and not college type, the trade schools, like welding, plumbing, and all.
They did that in Canada too.
See,
yeah.
So when they got here, it was just a promise. As soon as they got their first paycheck, they cut them loose. Saying you're on your own. And it was bad. So there was a lot of people on the street. A lot of probably it was right here again.
So just to get this clear, they were trying to lure Native Americans away from their reservations and into cities with the promise of jobs.
Yeah.
But then they didn't really give them a job after one paycheck.
After they went to trade school and learned the job, they were lucky if they got one job.
Okay.
There was still that discrimination because in any of the trade schools, you had that white mentality, the European mentality that you had to be white to be in the building trades. Anybody else had to be in the labor's local.
Oh, okay.
And that was differential. And the building trades, the rates were like, back when people were making $7 an hour, I was already making 15. And this was in the 60s. That's why I wanted that, And then when I jumped the gun a little bit. But
yeah.
So,
sorry, the Intertribal Friendship House was...
The Intertribal was the Indian Center, and it's open and active. It's still open today, active today. Anyway, we started going there, and in 1970, I got, because I was in the building trades, the Ford Foundation had this program, a leadership training program at UC Berkeley, and they needed somebody from the building trades, and they couldn't find anybody from building trades that was my color, so I was the only one. I got elected because I was the only one. Nobody else wanted to go to it, but I said, hey man, so I got into the program. It was 100 union people from all over California. There was plumbers, electricians, carpenters, any kind of AT&T, PBS, that's phone operators back in those days. All these unions, there was one from every union. There's 100 of us in that program. So I got to meet all these people in that program. The program was for upward advances to make you into like business agent.
Was the program for everybody or just Native Americans?
No, it was for underprivileged folks, I guess.
Oh, it was for underprivileged. Okay.
Under the EOP, I don't know, whatever it was.
Okay.
Ford Foundation set up the criteria, so I don't.
Okay.
I just knew that I lucked out. But anyway, so when we got that was in 67 when that started. So I got elected. I got chosen to go there, and what was really cool about it was I got an $800 a month stipend.
Was that a lot?
Yeah, back in the 60s, that was a lot of money. I only paid like $75 a month rent back then.
Oh, okay. All right.
But anyway, so I went to the program, but while I was in the program, the really cool part about it was I got to meet all these guys that were in all these other unions, and establish that relationship with them. And because when I got out here, I couldn't have got that job if I hadn't buffaloed my way into the union over there. I couldn't have got the job because I never signed nothing. I never signed. I was in jail. I never signed none of that. I just signed the union book, and I had gone in there, and the guy told me, "Go sign the book. Make sure you sign that book." So I went in there and I signed the book. Nobody was in the building when I signed the book. Right? So when I left, nobody. I figured my name's in the book anyway. So I signed the book. I couldn't find no work, so I went back about 2 days later and I signed the book again. And this time, this Irish guy came out. And he looked like he was about half drunk, and he was a business agent. He told me, "What the hell are you doing here? You don't belong in this local. You can get your ass down in the labor's local. That's downstairs. I told him, hey, I told him, I told him, hey, I got one toolbox that does linoleum tile, got another toolbox that does carpentry work. I told him, I don't need to be in the union. I think it's unfair that I have to be in the union and pay you dues anyway. But anyway, I said, I'll find work. So he told me I couldn't kick me out. And by then, I'd already been working there, probably different jobs, different unions, different shops. And unbeknownst to me, they would send in health and welfare benefits every month to the union. Right. So when they got my health and welfare benefits, vacation pay and stuff like that, I never got it. Just stayed in the union. I wasn't legally. I wasn't supposed to be in the union. So in late '67, they had a place down here in Oakland. It's called the Apostle of the Sea, and it was made for all these longshoremen, people that came from all over.
What's a longshoreman, Elder?
That's where the people who work on the docks unload the cargo.
Okay.
So they had all these people that no place to stay, so they built them a place right on the port. And I don't know how my name got on this volunteer list. All of a sudden I'm volunteering for all kinds of stuff for free money, and I said, wow. So, but I went there, and one of the guys that was there, I knew him when he was like an apprentice. And he was there volunteering also, and he was in the union. He told me, Eloy, you still running around? Not in the union? And I said, man, I don't pay all them. Every time they caught me in a job, they'd fine me $200, but I never paid them. So the fines kept accumulating on me. I told him, man, I ain't paying you all that money. And he said, no, he said, don't worry about that, man. He said, so we worked on that job, and he told me, he said, there's some stuff I know that you know. I want you to teach me. I said, all right. So I taught him out there on the job, And he tells me, he says, I'm going to run for business agent this coming quarter. He says, give me your phone number. I want to see you. I said, all right. So all of a sudden he called me one day and he says, Eloy. He said, guess what? I said, you're business agent. He says, yep, I swamped him. And I said, all right, man. He says, come on in. He said, you ever sign that book in the office? And I said, yeah, I signed the book. He said, well, let me check into it. So he looked in, called me back, and he says, you got some money here. I said, I got money there? And he said, yeah. He said, you got some money. I said, how much? He said, you got almost $9,000. And I said, what? And I said, wow. I said, can I get it? And he said, yeah, you can get it. I said, today? And he said, yeah, we can write you a check anytime you want. So I said, shoo.
That's so great.
Signed the paperwork. He gave me my union card. And the whole first time I ever had a union card was 1968. And then right after that, that's when that program came up. So I said, man, and the guy had to go get to the same business agent that was there before. He was there, and I had to go get a letter from him saying that I would have my job after the program ended. He said, I can't do that. I told him, hey man, I said, I'm gonna tell you what. I told him, I'm coming to the union meeting tomorrow, and I'm working at a shop that has 60 people in there, and I've taught about half of them how to do their job. He said, last time you were on with 30 people. I told him, I'm going to bring that whole shop, and they're going to vote for me. And he said, well, I'd like to see that. So we showed up, about 45 of them showed up. We seen them like that, and he said, let me talk to you. He says, I'm getting that letter prepared for you. So he gave me the letter, because without the letter, I couldn't get into the program. I didn't care about getting, I knew I could get a job. The guy where I worked for, he told me, anytime you want to come back, come back. Because I did linoleum and carpet, and most of the other guys didn't do that. They'd only do one or the other. I did three. I did a linoleum, carpet, and ceramic tile. So I got in the program, and I did there's about four people that were Indian. One was Inuit, One was from New Mexico, one was from Pueblo, and a Cherokee, and myself. They were considered natives. And then they had a bunch of Mexican people and a couple of Italian people, and 4 or 5 black people, 3 or 4 Chinese people, a couple of Japanese people. And so total, there was a bunch. This it was really a diverse group. It was pretty cool. So when I graduated, you know, they asked me, what did you want to do? So I went back, I told my wife. Anyway, after found out I had the $9,000, that's when we bought that little house.
Oh,
I paid $10,000 for that house. I paid $5,000 down and bought a new car.
that's amazing.
You know, it was money I didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
So I bought this little sports car, you know, because I always wanted to have that little car. I drove it home, and Lisa, she's always real practical.